Tri's AM Agenda with Kieran Gilbert.
Good morning and welcome to the program. Australia's ambassador to Indonesia will arrive back in the country today after being recalled by the Abbott government. And in yet more evidence of the challenge ahead in rebuilding the relationship with Indonesia, Sky News can reveal further details of a tense conversation between Julie Bishop and her Indonesian counterpart back in March. At the height of the government's efforts to seek clemency for Andrew Chan and Myuran Sukumaran, Julie Bishop asked the Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi what Indonesia does to secure clemency for its citizens on death row in other countries. In reply, the Indonesian Foreign Minister told Ms Bishop, "It's none of your business." Ambassador Paul Grigson will consult with the government over the coming days as the relationship between the two nations remains unstable. I spoke to the Assistant Treasurer Josh Frydenberg about this story, but I began by asking him about the Deloitte Access Economics report predicting a worse than expected deficit in next week's budget.
Well, Chris Richardson, who's a very well-respected economist, did say after the last budget, Kieran, that only the coalition has a credible path to fiscal repair. He did say that the opposition had washed its hands of providing a detailed alternative, in his words saying that the opposition preferred political posturing. Now, that's a contrast between us and them. We have $30 billion worth of savings measures that have been stuck in the Senate, including $5 billion worth of savings measures that Labor took to the last election that are now refusing to pass.
But it's not reducing the deficit. In fact, according to Deloitte Access Economics, we're seeing a deficit increase of $5 billion, $5.5 billion this financial year. No improvement at all for 15-16.
But Kieran, what Deloitte point out is that 75% of the problem has been on the revenue side. And we've actually written down around $100 billion worth of projected revenue due to the collapse in the commodity prices, particularly iron ore, which is 1/3 of Australia's exports. But it also says 25% of the problem is on the spending side. We've put up alternatives. Bill Shorten and Labor haven't. They've put up 2 new taxes as proposals, one including a slug on superannuation savings. But where is there alternatives to reduce spending? We haven't actually seen that, and today Bill Shorten is making a speech at the McKell Institute. It's time he came.
But we're seeing this report today, the Australians saying that the government has rejected another revenue-raising measure because it wants to create the difference with Labor, saying you're about spending cuts, they're about tax hikes. But the fact is, as you've just put it to our audience this morning, 75% of the problem is revenue.
Yep.
So why not look at further revenue measures?
Well, the issue you're talking about, which is the $1,000 threshold for online overseas internet sales into Australia, and below $1,000 there's no GST that applies, above $1,000 there is. That's an issue we would like to see concluded with the states. It was the subject of discussions, Kieran, with the Treasurer and his state and territory counterparts. There's going to be another meeting mid-year. Hopefully we can get some movement there because a number of Labor state treasurers have actually been supportive of that change. It's not for us to make a unilateral call.
Okay, but there's another measure that's referred to in this report relates to an expansion of the deficit levy imposed on higher income earners. Now, why not look at something like that if the budget repair job is as significant as the government had led us to believe?
Because, as you know, when we announced that measure, we said it would apply for 3 years, and it will.
So no expansion of that? There'll be no further taxes in this budget?
There's no plan to expand or to extend that temporary budget deficit levy. But the key point here is, where are Labor's savings alternatives? You see, their record in government, their fiscal record in government, is not a bad dream. You don't wake up in a sweat and say to yourself, well, that never happened. It actually did happen, and we are living with that legacy day after day, and the Australian people are paying $1 billion a month in interest alone on Labor's debt. That has to stop.
Now, the Fin Review suggesting that revenue losses caused by a flat wages growth is going to rival the tens of billions of dollars wiped off the bottom line due to the collapsed iron ore price. Is that a fair characterisation?
Well, it is a challenge for us because what happens with slower wages growth is that people fall into the eligibility thresholds for various transfer payments, and that does mean that more transfer payments are therefore made by the government.
Finally, I want to ask you about a story that we've reported this morning. Sky News understands that during the tense conversation between Julie Bishop and her Indonesian counterpart in March, that Julie Bishop asked Retno Marsudi, the Indonesian Foreign Minister. What does Indonesia do to have its citizens secure clemency when they're on death row in other countries? In response, the Indonesian Foreign Minister told Julie Bishop, it's none of your business. It's another sign of just how much of a challenge it's going to be to repair this relationship, isn't it?
Well, the relationship is bruised, Kieran, and we were very disappointed about the way the Indonesians handled this matter, and obviously the very terrible outcome. I think the relationship will recover. I think that it's important that it does, because the two countries have important bilateral partnership, particularly on the security front. So it will get back to an even keel. But it's worth pointing out that the Indonesian President Jokowi has apparently gone against the advice of his Vice President Yusuf Kala, against the advice of his political and presidential opponent Prabowo, and against the advice of the former president, Susilo
But in terms of this language used by the Foreign Minister, the Indonesian Foreign Minister, to Julie Bishop, as I say, my sources have told me that she said it's none of your business. Now,
Well,
when she was asking for advice on what the Indonesian policy is, that sort of language from one of our regional foreign ministers, is that acceptable?
Well, it would be very unfortunate if that was the language that was used, because the Indonesians have around 200 or more of their own citizens on death row, and they do seek clemency in those cases, but they couldn't find it in their heart, Kieran, to give clemency in the case of these two Australians. But look, Julie Bishop and Tony Abbott have handled this matter in a very dignified way. They've expressed the Australian people's concerns, but they've also got a view to the broader relationship and the importance to ensure that Australia and Indonesia remain good and effective friends.
Mr Frydenberg, appreciate your time. Thank
Nice
you.
to be with you, Kieran.
More now on that budget preview from Deloitte Access Economics. I spoke to Director of that organisation, Chris Richardson.
Look, it is a problem. The government